Okay, so get this. We're diving into the story of a 9-year-old kid who stumbles upon a fossil that, like, sends shockwaves through, well, the entire scientific community.
Wow.
Yeah, a 9-year-old. We've got research articles, notes, first-hand accounts, the whole shebang to really get into this story of Matthew Berger.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and how he basically tripped over a 2 million-year-old secret, uncovering a new chapter in the story of human evolution.
I mean, it really shows just how, pivotal those, like, seemingly random events can be in science, right? I mean, you have Matthew just out exploring a South African wildlife preserve with his dad, who just happens to be a paleoanthropologist.
Right, Lee Berger.
Yeah, Lee Berger. And boom, a discovery that reshapes our entire understanding of, well, of human evolution emerges.
And the location itself, I mean, talk about adding another layer to this whole thing, right?
Oh, yeah.
The Sterkfontein Caves near Johannesburg, it's like a paleoanthropologist's dream. I mean, this area is already, famous for the sheer volume of fossils unearthed there.
Oh, yeah.
And Lee Berger himself had been meticulously searching this region for 17 years.
Wow. 17 years.
17 years.
That's dedication.
Can you imagine the dedication?
I can't.
I mean, to be searching that long.
Yeah.
And what's amazing is, for almost 2 decades, Berger's findings were limited to just 2 small teeth.
Just 2 teeth.
2 tiny teeth.
Yeah.
But that didn't deter him. He held on to this conviction that the Sterkfontein Caves held more secrets, more pieces of the puzzle. I mean, talk of perseverance.
It really speaks to that. I mean, that's huge in, any scientific endeavor. It really is.
And it paid off. It really, really did.
Yeah.
It's incredible that after all those years, it was his son Matthew who made the breakthrough. I read that Matthew thought he'd found like an antelope bone, which honestly, for a 9-year-old, that's not a bad find.
Right.
Not a bad find at all. But Lee, I mean, with his trained eye, immediately recognized it as something far more significant. A hominid clavicle.
A clavicle.
Yeah. A clavicle, or collarbone, is incredibly rare to find in hominid fossils. I mean, it's a much more fragile bone compared to others, so the chances of it, being preserved are slim.
Wow.
So the fact that they found one hinted at the possibility of an even more complete skeletal discovery.
Right.
They had to know they were on to something big. And they weren't wrong. So this clavicle belonged to a young boy, about 12 or 13 years old, when he died roughly 2 million years ago. They named him Caribou, which means answer in the local language.
Wow.
It's such a fitting name considering the flood of questions this discovery unleashed. But hold on, because it gets even wilder. Just days later, Berger's team, and get this, they brought a group of kids with them.
Oh, wow.
Talk about fostering the next generation of scientists.
That's amazing.
They headed back to the site to see if they could unearth more clues.
Okay, so what happened?
Well, what unfolded next was nothing short of extraordinary. I mean, they weren't just dealing with a single bone anymore. They were on the verge of uncovering 2 remarkably complete skeletons.
2. Wow.
It sounds almost too good to be true. They're searching, with no luck, and just when they're about to call it a day, Berger spots a humerus.
Humerus?
Yeah, that's the bone in your upper arm, just peeking out from the rocks.
You're kidding. What are the odds?
What are the odds, right?
Wow.
This discovery was monumental because finding even partial hominid skeletons is rare, but to stumble upon 2 so close together and potentially linked is practically unheard of.
Right.
And they quickly realized that these skeletons promised to be as complete as the famed Lucy skeleton, but with significant differences.
Wow. Talk about a paleoanthropological goldmine.
It was. So they kept digging, and the discoveries just kept coming. Teeth, skull fragments, pieces of the skeleton. It was like they had hit the jackpot. And it became clear that they were dealing with a brand new species of hominid, which they named Australopithecus sediba. Sediba, by the way, means wellspring or fountain in the local Sesotho language. Again, just a perfect name, considering the wealth of knowledge this find has sprung forth. I mean, the discovery of Australopithecus sediba sent shockwaves through the scientific community. It presented a species with this really perplexing blend of both modern and ancient features. And honestly, it offers us a glimpse into this crucial point in human evolution, a period for which fossil evidence is remarkably scarce. Can you imagine the excitement?
And the debate.
Oh, the debates this sparked. But that's the story for our next part.
I mean, one of the most striking things about Sediba has got to be this blend of features that seem to link them to both Australopithecus and Homo.
Right, right.
Their hands, for example, they provide incredible insight into their capabilities.
We did touch on their hands a bit earlier,
Yeah.
but I'm really curious to explore this further.
Sure.
What specifically about their hand structure suggests that they were capable of both tool use and arboreal locomotion?
Well, what's fascinating is that Sediba's hands possess this really unique combination of traits.
Okay.
They have a relatively long thumb, which is a characteristic of hominids that engage in tool use.
Yeah.
A longer thumb provides greater dexterity and a more precise grip, essential for manipulating objects.
Makes sense, yeah.
So that's the link to tool use.
Yeah.
But how does their hand structure also point to life in the trees? Well, alongside that long thumb, they also have long, curved fingers.
Okay.
This curvature is typically seen in primates that spend a significant amount of time climbing and maneuvering through trees.
Right.
It allows for a strong grip on branches.
So we've got long thumbs for tools and curved fingers for climbing.
Yeah.
It's like they were perfectly adapted for a life that blended both terrestrial and arboreal environments.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, this challenges that traditional narrative of a linear progression from tree dwelling to ground dwelling, doesn't it?
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
It suggests that the transition was likely far more complex,
Okay.
with some hominids, like Sediba, potentially retaining adaptations for both environments. It
Interesting.
really highlights the adaptability of these early hominids.
It really does.
It makes you wonder what kind of tools they were using.
Yeah, were they using tools? Do we have any, like, archaeological evidence to support this?
Well, unfortunately, no tools have been directly associated with the Sediba skeletons at the Malapa site.
Okay.
However, based on their hand morphology, scientists speculate that they might have been capable of creating and using simple tools, perhaps for tasks like, digging for tubers or processing food.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So even though we haven't found the tools themselves, their anatomy hints at the possibility that they were already engaging in tool-related behaviors.
Exactly.
That's pretty incredible.
It is.
But let's move on to another fascinating aspect of Sediba, their brain size.
Sure.
As we mentioned earlier, Sediba had a relatively small brain, comparable to that of other Australopithecus species.
Right.
This might seem surprising considering, their other seemingly advanced features like their hands.
Yeah, I can see that.
Why would they have such a small brain if they were already exhibiting behaviors that we typically associate with larger brain size, like tool use?
Well, it challenges the assumption that brain size is the sole indicator of cognitive complexity. It's possible that Sediba, despite their smaller brain, might have possessed cognitive abilities that were, more advanced than we might expect based solely on brain volume.
Oh, interesting.
So it's not just about size, but about how the brain is organized and how efficiently those neural connections are working.
Right, so it's about the wiring, not just the size.
Exactly.
Okay, so how can we learn more about that?
Well, this is where further research on Sediba's cranial anatomy could provide some valuable insights.
Okay.
Scientists are currently using advanced imaging techniques to create detailed endocasts.
Endocasts.
Yeah, or internal molds of Sediba's brain cavity.
Okay.
So by studying these endocasts, researchers can analyze the shape and structure of Sediba's brain, looking for clues about their cognitive abilities. They can identify the areas of the brain that were more developed and try to infer what those areas might have been responsible for.
So even though we can't go back in time and observe Sediba's behavior directly, these endocasts are giving us a glimpse into the inner workings of their minds, their cognitive capabilities.
Exactly.
That's incredible.
It is, isn't it?
It really emphasizes the power of technology in paleontological research.
Absolutely.
Technology is constantly opening up new avenues for understanding the past.
It is.
And with Sediba, we're only just beginning to scratch the surface of what these fossils can teach us about human evolution.
Right.
Speaking of the broader picture of human evolution, let's revisit that debate surrounding Sediba's place on the family tree.
Sure.
We've got those three main hypotheses: a direct ancestor to Homo erectus, an ancestor to other early Homo species like habilis or rudolfensis, or a side branch that eventually died out.
Right.
What are the key arguments for and against each of these possibilities?
Okay, so let's break it down. The argument for Sediba being a direct ancestor to Homo erectus is based on some shared skeletal features,
Okay.
particularly in the pelvis and lower limbs, that appear more Homo-like than Australopithecus-like.
So they're seeing those anatomical similarities and proposing a direct lineage.
Yeah.
What about the arguments against this idea?
Well, one of the main counterarguments is the timeline.
Okay.
The Sediba fossils date back to roughly 1.98 million years ago.
Okay.
The earliest Homo erectus fossils, on the other hand, date back to about 2 million years ago.
So there's a potential overlap in their existence,
Exactly.
which would make it difficult to establish a clear ancestor-descendant relationship.
It would.
What about the hypothesis that Sediba might be ancestral to other early Homo species like Habilis or Rudolfensis?
That's another intriguing possibility.
Right.
Sediba shares some dental and cranial features with these species, suggesting a potential link.
Right.
However, the lack of fossil evidence from the same time period and geographic location makes it difficult to draw, definitive conclusions.
Yeah, it sounds like we need more fossils from that crucial period to really solidify these connections.
Well, you do.
What about the third possibility, that Sediba represents a side branch on the evolutionary tree, an evolutionary experiment that ultimately went extinct?
That's certainly a possibility, especially considering the unique combination of features that set Sediba apart.
Yeah.
Perhaps they represent a specialized lineage that adapted to a particular niche environment, but ultimately failed to survive.
So it's like they were testing the water, so to speak,
Right.
exploring different evolutionary pathways, but ultimately their branch of the tree didn't lead to our lineage.
Exactly.
It's incredible to think about the vastness of evolutionary history, the countless experiments and dead ends that ultimately led to us.
It is.
It's a humbling perspective, isn't it?
It really is.
Speaking of rewriting our understanding, let's delve into that death trap theory in a bit more detail.
Okay.
I'm curious about the evidence that supports this hypothesis,
Right.
and whether there are any alternative explanations for how Sediba met their end. What kind of clues are scientists looking for to piece together this ancient mystery?
Well, one of the primary pieces of evidence supporting the death trap theory is the condition of the skeletons themselves.
Okay.
They're remarkably complete and show no signs of being scavenged or disturbed by carnivores.
So the lack of predation marks suggests that they weren't attacked and killed by some prehistoric predator.
Right.
That makes sense, but how do we know they fell into a cave? What evidence points to that specific scenario?
Well, the Sediba skeletons were found alongside the remains of other animals, including antelopes, saber-toothed cats, and even a bird.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
So it's like they were all lured to this cave, perhaps by the promise of water during a drought,
Yeah,
and then met their demise.
it's possible.
What makes scientists think it was a death trap rather than just a natural accumulation of remains over time?
The way the bones are positioned and the types of sediments they're embedded in provide further clues. The skeletons were found relatively intact, suggesting they hadn't been transported far or disturbed significantly after death.
Right.
The sediments also indicate a rapid deposition event, like a sudden influx of water or debris.
Okay, so we've got complete skeletons, no signs of predation, a mix of species all found together, and geological evidence suggesting a rapid burial event.
Right.
It does paint a pretty convincing picture of a death trap scenario.
It does.
But are there any alternative explanations that scientists are considering?
Of course, it's always important to consider alternative hypotheses.
Right.
Some researchers have suggested that Sediba might have been deliberately disposing of their dead in the cave, similar to some primate species today.
Interesting.
However, there's currently no direct evidence to support this theory.
Right, it's fascinating to think about the different possibilities and the detective work that goes into reconstructing these ancient events.
Yeah.
It's like piecing together a puzzle with only a few fragments. But before we get too lost in the mystery of their deaths, I want to shift gears and explore the implications of Sediba's discovery for our understanding of human evolution.
Sure.
What are the key takeaways, the aha moments that have emerged from this research?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest takeaways from the Sediba discovery is this shift away from a linear view of human evolution.
Right.
It's forcing us to embrace this more nuanced branching perspective
Yeah.
and recognize that the path from Australopithecus to Homo was far more complex than we initially imagined.
It's like we're trading in that old image of a straight evolutionary ladder for a more intricate, interconnected tree.
Yeah.
With multiple branches, dead ends, parallel lineages.
Right.
Sediba is like a prime example of this complexity, showcasing this mosaic of traits that really just blur the lines between those traditional classifications.
Yeah, it's also a reminder that evolution isn't always about progress in a straightforward sense.
It's about adaptation, it's about experimentation, and sometimes, even failure.
Yeah.
I mean, Sediba, with this unique blend of features, might represent a lineage that explored a different evolutionary path,
Right.
one that ultimately didn't lead to our species.
That's right. It challenges the notion that every evolutionary step is a direct march towards Homo sapiens.
Right.
Instead, we see a tapestry of diverse lineages, each adapting to their specific environments and circumstances.
Yeah.
And Sadiba's story it highlights the vastness of evolutionary history and the countless possibilities that have unfolded over millions of years.
And another key takeaway is the importance of context in interpreting fossil discoveries.
Oh, for sure.
We can't just look at isolated features and, just draw conclusions about a species' place in that evolutionary tree.
Right.
We need to consider the entire suite of traits, the environment that they inhabited, and the broader evolutionary landscape.
Exactly. And Sadiba's a perfect example of how a single discovery can challenge long-held assumptions
Yeah.
and force us to reevaluate our understanding.
Yeah.
It really underscores the importance of remaining open to new interpretations and embracing the inherent uncertainty of scientific inquiry.
And this discovery also highlights, the ongoing nature of scientific exploration.
It does.
The Malapa site is still an active excavation area.
It is.
I mean, what are the chances of uncovering even more Sadiba fossils?
Right.
Or perhaps even finding evidence of their behavior, tools, diet?
I mean, the potential for further discoveries at Malapa is immense.
But-
The site has already yielded a treasure trove of fossils.
Right.
And continued excavation could unearth even more complete skeletons,
Yeah.
or perhaps even reveal artifacts that shed light on their culture and lifestyle.
I mean, imagine finding tools directly associated with Sadiba. That would be a game changer.
It would be huge.
It would provide concrete evidence of their capabilities and offer this glimpse into their daily lives.
Absolutely. And even if we don't find tools, there's so much more we can learn from the fossils themselves.
Yeah.
Advances in imaging techniques are allowing us to study the internal structures of bones and teeth, providing insights into their growth patterns, diet, and even potential injuries.
Wow. So it's not just about the bones themselves, but the microscopic details that they hold. The
Yeah.
stories etched into their very structure.
Exactly.
It's incredible how much information we can extract from these ancient remains.
It really is. It speaks to the power of scientific inquiry and the constant development of new tools and techniques for understanding the past.
Yeah.
Who knows what future discoveries await us at Malapa or other sites around the world.
It's both exciting and humbling to think about all the mysteries that remain to be unraveled.
Yeah.
All those pieces of the puzzle still waiting to be found.
It's true.
This deep dive into the world of Australopithecus sediba has been a whirlwind of discovery. We've explored their unique features, debated their place in the family tree, pondered the circumstances of their death.
We have.
But before we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought.
I agree. It's important to step back and consider the broader implications of Sadiba's discovery, what it means for our understanding of human evolution as a whole.
If we could travel back in time and observe Sadiba in their natural environment, what do you think we would witness?
Wow.
What would we learn about their behavior, their social structures, their interactions with the world around them?
That's a fascinating question to contemplate.
Yeah.
We can speculate based on their skeletal features and the environment they inhabited.
Yeah.
Perhaps we would see them, skillfully navigating both the trees and the ground, using their unique hand structure to gather food, create tools, care for their young.
Maybe we would witness complex social interactions.
Right.
Evidence of cooperation and communication within their groups.
Yeah.
Or perhaps we would see the challenges they faced.
Right.
The constant struggle for survival in a harsh and unpredictable world.
It's a reminder that these weren't just bones, but living, breathing beings with their own stories to tell, their own roles to play in the grand drama of evolution.
It's a story that continues to unfold with every new discovery, a story that reminds us of our connection to that vast web of life.
It does.
And the incredible journey that has led to our own existence.
That's amazing.
So if this deep dive has sparked your curiosity, I encourage you to explore further.
Yeah, for sure.
There's a wealth of resources available, books, articles, documentaries,
There are.
all waiting to deepen your understanding of human evolution and the fascinating world of paleoanthropology.
You got it.
And who knows, maybe one of you listening will be the next to make a groundbreaking discovery. adding another piece to the ever-evolving puzzle of our origins.
I love it.
Until then, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep marveling at the wonders of the natural world.